we put our stuff down here?
I had to travel out to Kentucky for work, and this required me to take the smallest commercial plane I've ever been on for a flight to Louisville, Kentucky. Once I landed in Kentucky, I expected to be greeted by signs for Kentucky Fried Chicken and the Kentucky Derby. But instead, plastered all over the airport was whiskey, whiskey, and more whiskey. Now, driving around Kentucky is exactly how I pictured it. A bunch of open space. It was very calm and relaxing. While out here, I took a tour of the Maker's Mark Distillery in Loretto, Kentucky. Now, Maker's Mark whiskey stands out due to the red wax that's on the bottle. I'm not a huge whiskey fan. In fact, I hardly ever drink it. But I thought it might be a cool experience, and I was right. Driving to the distillery, I got to see more of the state, and even got to ask one of the locals for directions. Do you know where I go to get to Maker's Mark Distillery? Thank you. I mean, he wasn't very helpful. But I eventually found the distillery and went in to start my tour. The entrance where you purchased your tickets for the tour was filled with all different types of art. Now, I don't know what this giant popsicle has to do with whiskey, but it was cool nonetheless. And who doesn't like a giant picture of a bear? Walking around the distillery campus, it's filled with a ton of black buildings. What's interesting is they were forced to paint these buildings black due to the black fungus covering the buildings. Now, I'm not going to pronounce the fungus name correctly, so here it is on the screen. This black whiskey fungus grows in the presence of ethanol vapors when some of the spirits evaporate, or what they call the angel's share. While it's all over the distillery, it apparently doesn't cause any health problems, and as an allergen, it isn't supposed to be any bigger of a problem than any other fungi grown naturally in the environment. Now, I'm sure this is true, but I started sneezing all over the distillery and was stuffed up the rest of the day after the trip. It could have been the whiskey fungus, or maybe just the warm Kentucky environment. Who knows? I've never been to a distillery before, and walking in and seeing the fermenters sitting out there and bubbling was a pretty cool sight. Maker's Mark is made of 70% corn, 16 soft winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. Apparently, due to the malted barley, you don't need to add enzymes to the process of mashing. The natural enzymes of the malt split the starch of the grains inside the mash tun. Now, do I know what I just said? No. But this is what the guy told me, and I'm sticking to it. Now here's a room with women making the labels. It's cool to see people doing things by hand, and not an automation process, just pumping out labels. They ended up giving us an example label to take home. They then showed us the process they went through to make the barrels, and how long they would store the whiskey. Apparently the whiskey is stored in the barrels for around 6 years or so, but the guide said they don't go by date, and instead go by the taste of the whiskey to determine if it's good or not. Look at all these barrels. Barrel after barrel after barrel after barrel. Hey look, there's more of that whiskey fungus. After seeing barrel after barrel of whiskey, we were taken to the bottling part of the production, and I was surprised that just like the label process, it wasn't more automated. Now the tour was officially over, and it was time to head to the taste testing. They ended up setting us up with 4 samples to try. What's in the 5th cup to the right, you ask? Water. The first sample was the Maker's Mark Signature Whiskey.
Enjoy. Cheers.
Yep, that's definitely whiskey. The second sample was the cask strength. And I thought it tasted like whiskey as well, but gave more of a warm feeling, or what they call a warm Kentucky hug. The third sample was the number 46 French Oak, and you can't fool me because that tastes exactly like whiskey. The fourth sample was the Private Selection Milk Chocolate Truffle, and I couldn't taste the chocolate in it at all. In fact, it tasted just like whiskey to me.
The other Private Selection
Didn't taste like chocolate.
is in the gift shop is Laura's Chest.
As stated earlier, Maker's Mark whiskey is known for the red wax on the bottle. So I ended up purchasing a bottle so that I could dip it myself. Which one did I go with? Well, the chocolate truffle, of course. It's like a warm chocolate hug. And $80 later, I got to dip it into the wax.
Here, down, doesn't matter which way? Vertically.
The whiskey fungus must have gotten to me, because I was taking a little while to understand what he was saying.
So like that.
So first it's down, then it's out of the box.
Okay.
Sideways, then spin twice.
All right.
And then
So
spin.
down, out, sideways. All right.
Or down. Here, I'm gonna show you.
All right. I'm gonna
It's
need
easier
to
to
show
know.
you.
You're good. It's easier to show than it is to tell because I can't really describe it.
Before the dipping, I made sure to ask the important questions.
And then stand.
All right. How deep should I go?
You can go pretty much your preference. That's the beginning.
All right.
And then spin twice. And then stand straight.
There we go. Dip, turn. All right.
Oh, good job.
All right. So you'll hire me?
I mean, hey, we've been awesome.
All right. Cool.
Overall, even though I'm not a whiskey drinker, it was cool to see the process that they go through to make and store the whiskey. And I'd recommend going and checking out this distillery if you ever find yourself in Kentucky. Now it's time for me to take a Benadryl and catch my plane flight home. That's all for this video. I'll see you next time.
Like and subscribe.